Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. This is All3 Viewers Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date, Sunday, August 13th, 2017. Yes, it is very horrific what occurred yesterday in Charlottesville, Virginia. And what I've been observing and looking up, it was mainly on a statue of General Robert E. Lee, according to some of the reports I've been examining. Then folks from the alt-right decided to do a rally there, and they had issues with their permits. I'd like examining all sides of the story here in good faith. And of course, a lot of things have happened. Innocent people were seriously injured. One was presumed dead. And there was a claim that person represented the International Workers Union. Regardless what their political views are, it is absolutely unacceptable when someone's life been taken or been seriously injured. A lot of injuries have occurred from both ends because of differences. So I'm going to actually be addressing one of the things I'm really disturbed is a violation of Mr. Spencer's and his associates' free speech. Because it has to be addressed. Before I do that, I am at CJ's Java Lounge, located at 400 Southwest 1st Avenue, Suite 1, along the New River of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, within the Yacht Club. And it's actually the southwest corner of the Andrews Avenue Bridge. I could say, in good faith, I was going to say this is a repeat of the Roman Republic and what's been happening with some of the instances. Even it happened at Berkeley. So, well, one thing I'm going to do is narrate Glenn Greenwald's article from The Intercept, which is absolutely valid to the point. A lot of folks are criticizing the American Civil Liberties Union on defending the neo-Nazis' free speech. So the title will be ACLU Defending Neo-Nazis Free Speech in Charlottesville. There'll be an article from that. It's entitled The Misguided Attacks on ACLU for Defending Neo-Nazis Free Speech Rights in Charlottesville. It's by Glenn Greenwald. You could send your correspondence to him at greenwald@theintercept.com. And they have a lot of great stuff. Doesn't mean I'm going to agree with everything they stand for, but a great abundance of it has a lot of merit. So I've actually examined this, and I'm going to do a narration and give you my intake on a few things that the government of Charlottesville can be responsible for depriving their right to free speech and assembly. So, as it reads here, each time horrific political violence is perpetrated that is deemed to be terrorism, a search is immediately conducted to culprits to blame other than those who actually perpetrate the violence or endorse the group responsible for it. It is usually only a matter of hours before the attack is exploited to declare one's own political views vindicated and to depict one's political adversaries as responsible for, if not complicit in, the violence. Often accompanying this search for villains is a list of core civil liberties that were told ought to be curtailed in the name of preventing similar acts or violence in the future. All of this typically happens before much of anything is known about the killer, his actual inspirations, his mental health, or his associations. In the aftermath of the widespread horror such violence naturally produces, the easiest target for these guilt by association tactics are those who advocated for the legal rights of the group of which the individual attacker is a member, and or those who defended the legal right to express the opinions in the name of which the attack was carried out. These tactics are most familiar when Muslim perpetrates violence within a Western city aimed at Westerners before anything is known about the attacker other than his religious identity. The violence is instantly declared to be terrorism. Then the search is quickly launched to find anyone who can be said to be responsible for the violence by virtue of having encouraged or enabled Islamic extremism, often by nothing more than having defended the legal rights of the group that is being blamed for the attack. At top of the blame list, one always finds a wide range of imams who preach Islam, even those who never in their lives advocated violence of any kind, as well as activists who defend Muslims from bigotry and persecution. But almost prominently featured in this vilification game are legal groups such as the Council on American Islamic Relations CARE and the ACLU that defend the free speech rights and other civil liberties of Muslims to be free of state persecution and suppression. Recently, even social platforms that allow Muslims to express themselves without state censorship are said to be complicit. Linking to CARE to terrorist attacks because of their civil liberties work is commonplace among the Islamophobic right. The ACLU, which has defended accused Al-Qaeda terrorists, try to prevent the Obama administration from killing Anwar al-Awlaki without due process and oppose the criminal persecution of Muslim extremists on free speech grounds, is constantly vilified as terrorist enablers by the anti-Muslim right as a result of that civil liberties advocacy. By now, each time there's a new attack, the UK government routinely accuses Facebook and other social media companies of aiding and abetting ISIS and Al-Qaeda because of its refusal to obey UK government orders about which views should be censored from the site. Manchester, good example. And Theresa May talked about the free flow of information. You can look up my episode on that. It came out 2 months ago. And there's a link, and there's a site there called Wiki Standard Al-Qaeda Civil Liberties Union. Al-Qaeda Civil Liberties Union. It came out on the 9th. You can look it up yourselves. Anyone who defends legal rights of terrorists or gives them a platform is culpable for violence they commit has been standard neoconservative and far-right camp for decades. One of the most obvious examples came from 2009 when a group started by Bill Kristol and Lynn Cheney calling itself Keep America Safe. Produces ads strongly implying that Obama DOJ lawyers who defended Al-Qaeda suspects were supporters of jihadi violence against the U.S., demonizing lawyers and civil liberties advocates by depicting them as complicit in the heinous acts of their clients is a long-standing scam that is not confined to the U.S. The Belgian lawyer who represented one of the Muslim attackers in Paris, Seven Mary, said he had suffered physical and verbal attacks and his daughter had even needed a police escort to school. Needless to say, none of these legal organizations or individual lawyers condone violence. They all vehemently oppose the ideology and worldview in the name of which this violence is committed. Yet, they are all blamed for the violence and the accused of complicity in it because they defend free speech rights and civil liberties of people who express views in the name of which violence is committed. The same warped mentality, blaming civil liberty advocates for the bad acts of their clients, was on full display yesterday in the wake of a heinous car attack in Charlottesville, Virginia, by a white nationalist group on a group of anti-fascist protesters. The attack killed one woman, a 32-year-old paralegal, Heather Hare, and injured multiple anti-racist protesters, many of them who were members of a group such as Democratic Socialists of America and Industrial Workers of the World. So I will, my mistake, I said American Industrial Workers Union, so Industrial Workers of the World, now regularly castigated as the alt-left, as though they bear any resemblance to the alt-right groups. They bravely protest. The accused attacker, 20-year-old James Alex Fields Jr., is in custody. He seems to have been photographed participating before the attack at the White Nationalist March, and Fields' local Ohio paper cited his mother as saying her son texted her Friday to see if he had dropped his cat off at her McCullough Township apartment so he can go to the alt-right rally in Virginia. Some of the attempts to assign culpability for this violence on the others besides the perpetrator were reasonable and rational. In particular, a legitimate causal connection can be drawn between this violence and the 2-year flirtation by Donald Trump and several of his closet advisors with the rhetoric and even the activism of white nationalism, as even many of the white supremacists themselves recognized. As I argued last August, it seemed only in a matter of time before Trump's worldview sparked violence of this kind. The rhetoric that Trump has been embracing over the past 18 months is extraordinarily frightening, because even if he loses, he is emboldening extremist nationalism, racism, all kinds of bigotry. He's given license for his expression. He is serving as a galvanizing force for these very dangerous elements, not just the American political culture, but in Europe and elsewhere throughout the right. So it's like more like a cult of personality what he's addressing here. And it happens on both sides of the coin, worldwide to be exact, politically speaking. But other blame attempts were not just baseless, but themselves deeply pernicious, a mirror image of the ugly Crystal Cheney campaign against Obama's Justice Department, lawyers who had defended the due process rights of Al-Qaeda members. Last week, the ACLU sparked controversy when it announced that it was defending the free speech rights of alt-right activist Milo Yiannopoulos after the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority refused to allow ads for his book to be displayed on public transit. Lost in the debate was that other groups the ACLU was defending along Yiannopoulos was also censored under the same rule. Charolettesville, which helped women access birth control and medication abortion. The animal rights group PETA and the ACLU itself. For representing Yiannopoulos, the civil liberties group was widely accused of defending and enabling fascism. But the ACLU wasn't defending Yiannopoulos as much as was opposing a rule that allows state censorship of any controversial political messages the state wishes to suppress, a rule that is often applied to groups which are supported by many who attack the ACLU here. The same formula was applied yesterday when the people learned that the ACLU of Virginia had represented the white supremacist protesters in Charlottesville after city officials tried to ban the group from gathering in Emancipation Park, where a statue of Robert Lee was to be removed. City officials tried to move the march to an isolated location 1 mile away. And I just to let you folks know, Robert E. Lee was against slavery. I don't know why these asswipes in Charlottesville want to take it down. Weak and pathetic. People need to study their history before talking out of their rear ends. City officials try to, okay, well, I'm right here. One board member of the ACLU of Virginia, Waldo Jacquith, waited until the violence erupted to announce on Twitter that he was resigning in protest of the ACLU's representation of the protesters, as though he was unaware that he joined the board that the ACLU is representing the free speech rights of neo-Nazis and other white supremacist groups, along with communists, Muslims, war protesters, and the full spectrum of marginalized minorities and leftists for many decades. Many attacked the ACLU's decision to represent Yiannopoulos and these Charlottesville protests, though they were allies of the marchers, while others literally accused them of enabling fascism or even blamed them for the violence. Ironically, just last month, the ACLU was a target of a similar defunding campaign by the anti-Islam, pro-Israel right for the group's defense of Muslim American activist Linda Sarzaar, such as life as a principled civil liberties proponent. The flaws and dangers in this anti-free speech mindset are manifest, but nonetheless always worth highlighting, especially when horrific violence causes people to want to abridge civil liberties in the name of stopping it. And some purporting to oppose fascism by allowing the state to ban views it opposes is like purporting to opposite human rights abuses by mandating the torture of all prisoners. One of the defining attributes of fascism is forcible suppression of views. For your fascism, disagreement is treason, wrote Umberto Eco. Recall that one of Trump's first proposal after winning the 2020 election was to criminalize flag desecration. You can't fight the ideology by employing and championing one of its defining traits, viewpoint based on state censorship. Even this position could be morally justified. Those who favor free speech suppression or who oppose the ACLU's universal defense on speech rights will create results that are exact opposite those they claim to want. It is indescribably misguided strategy that will inevitably victimize themselves and their own views. Let's begin with one critical fact. The ACLU has always defended and still does defend the free speech rights of most marginalized left-wing activists, from communists and atheists to hardcore war opponents and pacifists to Muslim extremists, even NAMBLA. That's true. Of any consistent civil liberties advocate, we defend the rights of those with views we hate in order to strengthen our defense of the rights of those who are most marginalized and vulnerable in society. And there's an article on that too that came out August 31st, 2000, that they represent NAMBLA. The ACLU is primarily a legal organization. That means they defend people's rights in court under principles of law. One of the governing tools of court is precedent, the application of prior rulings to current cases. The ACLU allows the state to suppress free speech rights of white nationalists or neo-Nazi groups by refusing to defend such groups when the state tries to censor them, or by allowing them to have inadequate representation. Then the ACLU's ability to defend free speech rights of groups and people that you like will be severely compromised. Screw one person's rights, it'll be everyone else's. It's called domino effect, my friends. And hopefully all you Antifa or left-wing people that hate neo-Nazi groups are really paying attention to this. It is easy to be dismissive of the serious aspect of the debate if you are some white American or non-Muslim American whose free speech is very unlikely to be depicted as a material support for terrorism or otherwise criminalized. But if you're someone who cares about free speech attacks on radical lefts, Muslims, and other marginalized groups, and try to defend those rights in court, then you're going to be generally afraid of allowing any free speech presence to become entrenched that will then be used against you. When it's time to defend free speech rights, the ACLU is not defending white supremacist groups, but instead is defending a principle. One that it must defend if it's going to be successful in defending free speech rights for people you support. Beyond that, the contradiction embedded in this anti-free speech advocacy is so glaring. For many of those attacking the ACLU here is a staple of their worldview that the U.S. is a racist, fascist country and that those who control the government are right-wing authoritarians. There is a substantial validity to that view. Why then would people who believe that simultaneously want to invest in these same fascism-supporting authorities the power to ban and outlaw ideas they dislike? Why would you think that the list of prohibited ideas will end up including the views you hate rather than the views you support? Most levers of state power are now controlled by the Republican Party, while many Democrats have also advocated the criminalization of left-wing views. And there's links on here you go. Look up for yourselves, my friends. Greenwald has a lot of merit, so I will continue on. Why would you trust those officials to suppress free speech in ways that you find just and noble, rather than oppressive? As I wrote in my comprehensive 2013 defense of free speech at The Guardian, this overflowing naivety is what I've always found most confounding about the left-wing case against universal free speech. This belief state authorities will exercise this power of censorship magnanimously and responsibly. At any given point, any speech that subverts state authority can be deemed, legitimately so, to be hateful and even tending to incite violence. Then there is the backup attack on the ACLU. Okay, fine, I'm for free speech, even Milo and Nazis, but why don't they spend their resources defending free speech for good people rather than white supremacists? Nobody's forcing them to take these cases. As a recent Vox article on the ACLU debate put it, some question whether the organization should be using its resources to defend such awful groups of people. It's one thing in theory to support universal free speech rights, but it's another to actually spend time and money defunding neo-Nazis. That was one of the arguments made by ACLU lawyer Chase Strangio in objecting to the group's decision to defend Yiannopoulos. Notably, that this was the same argument made by the right-wing neocon activists who attacked the Obama DOJ for defending Al-Qaeda's members. Yes, fine, everyone deserves defense, but what they did choose to represent Al-Qaeda. As National Review Andrew McCarthy put in attacking those lawyers, the salient issue in the controversy over Justice Department attorneys who formally represent our terrorist enemies detained at Guantanamo Bay is this: they were volunteers. Leave aside the fact that the ACLU does expend vast resources to defend the rights of immigrants, minorities, against abusive policing, and the racist justice system, and Muslims. Beyond all that, the reason it's vital to expend resources to defend free speech rights of all full people, even white nationalists, is because that's where free speech battles are always and by definition fought. There's always those whose views are deemed to be odious by the mainstream that are the initial targets of censorship efforts. It's very rare that the state tries to censor the views held by the mainstream. If you allow the initial censorship efforts to succeed because you distaste for those being targeted, then you lose the ability to defend the rights of those you like because censorship principle has been enshrined. That's why the ACLU, for instance, defended the free speech rights of the revolting Fred Phelps, and one of his leading LGBT lawyers justified that position this way. As what Chris Hampton has to say, from Sarah, we do it because we believe in principle and because we realize that once you chip away at one person's rights, everyone else are at risk. Free speech doesn't belong to those we agree with, and the First Amendment doesn't only protect free speech that is distasteful and inoffensive. In fact, it is in hard cases that our commitment to the First Amendment is the most tested and most important. As one federal judge has put it, tolerating hateful speech is the best protection we have against any Nazi-type regime in this country. Then finally, there's an argument about efficacy. How can anyone believe that neo-Nazism or white supremacy will disappear in the U.S. or even be weakened if it's forcibly suppressed by the state? It is not glaringly apparent that the exact opposite will happen. By turning them into free speech martyrs, you will do nothing but strengthening them and make them more sympathetic. Literally, nothing has helped Yiannopoulos become a national cult figure more than well-intentioned but failed efforts to deny him a platform. Nothing could be better designed to aid their cause than converting a fringe, tiny group of overt neo-Nazis in some sort of poster child for free speech rights. The need to fight neo-Nazism and white supremacy, whatever it appears, is compelling. The least effective tactic is to try to empower the state to suppress the expressions of their views. that will backfire in all sorts of ways, strengthening that movement and ensuring that those who advocate state censorship today are its defenseless targets tomorrow. In other words, blowback. And whatever else is true, the impulse to react to terrorist attacks by demanding the curtailment of core civil liberties is irrational, dangerous, and self-destructive, no matter how tempting that impulse might be. I gotta give it to Mr. Greenwald, man. Fantastic article. And I can say this, I've been watching the videos and examining and hitting all sides of the sources. You have too many infiltrators on both sides. Collaborators, plants, etc. You have to expect it. That's one of the things I get really annoyed. Because as a person, as myself, as an activist, I see these things really thorough. So when I went out there to see folks actually protesting and tell them get them off in these rallies, you're just like them. You're just like those tyrants. And I can say this too. Blood on their hands on Mr. Spencer and the alt-right. Respectfully, I disagree. But they did get that permit, and it got denied. And the police protection on safety failed. There's a lot of reports from all sides. They was brought down. They brought them down or deactivated them. I want to read a couple of articles on the state constitution, Commonwealth of Virginia. Article 1, Bill of Rights, Section 1, Equality, Rights of Men. And as it reads, that all men are by nature equally free and independent, have certain inherited rights of which, when they enter into a state of society, they cannot by any compact deprive or divest their posterity, namely the enjoyment of life and liberty with the means of acquiring and possessing property and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. They failed on that. We'll go to Section 12 of the same article, which is entitled Freedom of Speech. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll just, and as it reads, freedom of speech, press, right peaceably to assemble and to petition. Now, freedom of speech and the press are among the great bulwarks of liberty and can never be restrained except by despotic governments. So, the government of Charlottesville and their bend-over bobbing mayor, are you considered a despotic form of government? That any citizen may speak freely, write and publish his sentiments on all subjects, being responsible for the abuse of that right. That the General Assembly shall not pass any law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, nor the right of the people to assemble and to petition the government for the redress of grievances. So, the elected servants of Charlottesville, can you explain why you contradicted that section of the Bill of Rights? And we could hit 17. Oops, hold on. Here we go. We'll hit 17, which is entitled Construction of the Bill of Rights. It's a little bit slow here, so bear with me. And as it reads here, the rights enumerated in this Bill of Rights shall not be construed to limit other rights of the people not therein expressed. Was that equivalent to the 9th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution? So, in all due respect and in good faith, Charlottesville, Virginia has deprived their oath of office. And I can guarantee you this. Right under Section 7, all officers elected or appointed under the or prudent to this Constitution shall, before they enter on the performance of the public duties, severally take and subscribe the following oath or affirmation. Quote, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge all duties incumbent upon me as blank on a position according to the best of my ability, so help me God. Interesting, right? Something folks don't want to point the finger at. Could you explain why? Absolutely. And I'm one of those individuals who have my disagreements with the ACLU. However, I will respect them. A lot of members, representatives in there on principles. I may not be an ACLU member, but I will network with them when it comes to constitutional principles. And I've done it before. To anyone else, I may have different political views. When it comes to free speech, we both agree, we stand side by side. So, something to really think about, my friends. And I'm going to add in here too, because I can say I'm pretty convinced this is more like history repeating itself during the Weimar Republic of Germany with these clashes. It came out in the 20s and how Hitler got into power. So I'm going to add a little note in here, which is actually from the Militant Monitor.org, which is originally came from Emerson, Vermont, on the 22nd of April 2008 under pipelinenews.org. And he's actually from the Netherlands. And it just says here, Nazi and communist collaboration in Germany during the decade preceding Hitler's Third Reich. How they collab. There's like interesting stuff here, because this is why you always got to expect these movements. You got collaborators, infiltrators, and provocateurs from both sides of the coin. To all you folks out there that think shutting down folks' assembly because you disagree or hate them, I'll say this. That's going to the left. You're going to have that mindset, the communist sympathizers, you should be wearing an I love Adolf Hitler button when doing this. There's supposed to be some big event happening by Mr. Spencer at University of Florida. He goes, oh, we're going to stop these Nazis now. You know what? Let them speak and counter it with intellectual ammunition. We want to get people thinking in that realm. Shut them down, you're just like the Third Reich. I'll see how many of you communist sympathizers out there have an altar of Adolf Hitler in your rooms or your basements or your closets. Government in Latin once again means control of the mind. And that is it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you said something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Scene.life, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, or Patreon.com//LokiLuck3, which is 3 eyes altogether. In addition, you can email me at LokiLuck3@gmail.com, or to your encrypted types, LokiLuck03@protonmail.com. All right, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.